What is the creepiest glitch you've experienced in real life? Story 1. I had a really good friend throughout high school, and a few years after high school, we played football together, worked out together, and even worked together for a while. We fell out of touch when he started getting involved in substances and other stuff I wasn't interested in. Fast forward about 3 years and I have a dream. I am back in my high school weight room, working out, and my buddy is there. I say hi and we are catching up, just talking and having a good time. This goes on for a bit, and then he tells me he has to go. I ask him to stay longer because I miss him and want to keep talking. He says, "I'm sorry, I can't. I have to go now. I'll see you later." And he left. I was then woken up to the sound of my phone ringing, and it was my mom. I answer it and she asks if I had heard what happened. I asked what she was talking about, and she told me that my buddy had died last night. I was in shock. Apparently, my mom heard from his mom that morning, and the first thing she did was call me. He had overdosed on substances at his parents' house, about 5 minutes from where I was living, and it likely happened while I was asleep. I like to tell myself that he was just stopping by to say goodbye to me and give me some closure since we hadn't spoken since our falling out. He was the first real close friend that I lost. Unfortunately, he wasn't the last. Story 2. My father was in the hospital for surgery and had to stay there overnight. But when I tried to fall asleep, I heard him inside of the house. Being the stupidly curious person I am, I went to go investigate, and there he was, walking around with a confused expression on his face. When I asked him why he wasn't at the hospital, he replied with, "I don't know. I just fell asleep and here I am." After that, he just kind of walked away and out the front door, which was strange to watch. When I went to visit him the next day, he told me he had a strange dream where he was at our house, but only I seemed to see him. Probably one of the creepiest moments of my life. Story 3. I had a dream about a coworker. She loved dogs and would always ask me to share pictures of my GSD and Labrador whenever we'd talk at work. In the dream, she was on a couch crying. My Labrador is a very emotional, connected dog. She goes to anyone she thinks is sad, which is exactly what she did in the dream. My coworker looked at me and said, "Thank you for sharing her. I feel better about all of this now." I found out at work the next day that my coworker had tripped at the top of her stairs and died that night. The dream still freaks me out when I think about it. It was so vivid and clear. Answer. I once had a coworker that I had a huge crush on. She would just generally flirt a little bit, but nothing ever happened. We were more like work spouses than anything. We worked in different departments, but would sometimes end up working on the same projects together. And she IM'd me in the early morning to come and talk to her. It seemed kind of urgent. She wanted to tell me about a dream she had about me. At first I thought this was actually headed somewhere, but the look in her eyes said otherwise. She was genuinely unsettled. Turns out the whole dream was kind of nothing. I was a camp guide that was showing her around a national park or something like that, but she was convinced that it was real. She was Googling locations, asking if I'd ever been there. Honestly, for the next week, our interactions had changed. She was very concerned that I had intruded on her dreams like that, and still had a hard time shaking that it hadn't actually happened. Story 4. While this may not seem creepy, I can tell you the experience most definitely was creepy. This happened when I was 8 and working in the yard with my mom. My mother and I were doing the spring planting in the flower beds around the house. I went inside for a pee break, and on my way to the bathroom, I had to walk through the living room. I entered the LR through the kitchen, looked up, and on the other side of the LR, I saw sitting on the couch none other than my sister. She was wearing her school uniform and was looking towards me, but not at me. Never said a word. Nothing really unusual, right? What makes this a glitch? My sister was hundreds of miles away at boarding school, not helping us plant flowers and certainly not sitting at the edge of the couch giving me a blank stare. My little 8-year-old self reversed course and locked himself in the half bath until he regained the courage to go back through the house and finish planting hostas. Story 5. Has anyone else experienced long, realistic dreams where you're knowingly in the somewhat distant future? I had one dream a few years ago like this. Don't know exactly what year it represented, but I'd guess maybe 2030s, 2040s. I knew I was middle age at least. It felt like I was there for a complete day in regular real time. Except I knew that I was essentially just visiting and whatever was going on there had no consequences for me, and I was free to wander around. I was invited into someone's apartment at one point and was looking around thinking, wow, so that's what the future designed. Trends will be, I need to remember this. And I was studying this centralized high-tech control panel on the wall for all the smart house type stuff. Unfortunately, I didn't see any cars. Out in the city, there was some forced population registration thing going on with tense booths set up outside various stores, and the people manning it were threatening me that I didn't have this new ID card yet. But I knew I wasn't actually there and could safely ignore their threats. I was in this vivid dream so long and got so used to the new future environment that when I finally woke up in my own bed and real life, it felt like I had just traveled back in time, much to my relief. I wonder if I'll have some major crazy deja vu in another decade or so. Story 6. Was taking the train home one afternoon, and an old man was sitting in the row ahead of me. He turned around and asked for directions to the hospital, and I told him which stop to get off at. Eventually, his stop arrives, and he gets up to leave. But before he exits, he turned and said, "Thank you, I'll see you later." I said, "Yeah, no problem." And again he said, "I'll see you later." And he looked me right in the eye. I said, "Sure, see ya." And he got off the train and hobbled away with his cane. Thought it was a little weird. He was adamant about seeing me around, but whatever. Freaky thing is, when I got off the train and to the bus station, about 5 minutes after boarding my bus, I hear a voice that sounds like the old man. I looked out the bus window, and sure enough, he was there at the bus station. Same clothes, hat, and cane. I know it was the same guy, but with his walking speed and the available bus train routes at the time, I have zero clue how he got to the bus station right when I did. There are no buses near the hospital that go to that bus station, and my train was the only train that had just arrived at the bus station. Story 7. I had a dream an old friend, who I hadn't spoken to or seen around or anything in about 2 years, died, and I went to his funeral. I woke up and thought, whoa, that's weird, and went to check his Facebook to see what he was up to. He had gone missing a few days previous, but his body wasn't found until over a year later. Answer: when I was a teenager, I had an unhealthy emotional connection to a particular musical artist. I wasn't crushing on him. It was more like he was a father figure, or my therapist or something. One night I dreamed that he died, and I woke up about 5 minutes before my alarm clock the next morning, thinking about this dream and thinking about how glad I was that it was just a dream. Then my alarm went off, and the very first thing I hear is that this particular artist had just died. It was kinda spooky. Story 8. We owned a restaurant about 10 years ago, and a lovely older couple would come and have soup and sandwiches almost every day. They had a grandson who did substances. One day, they come in, and the woman is quite upset as the grandson had overdosed and had a stroke. They didn't know if he was going to make it. We comforted her and told her we were sorry to hear that. Then, about 20 minutes later, the grandson walks in. No problems at all. Husband and I look at each other like, what? But we didn't say anything to anyone. Just thought maybe old age was creeping in, as sometimes she would say odd things. A week later, the grandson overdosed and had a stroke. Almost didn't make it, but pulled through. Story 9. I've spent an entire 2 or 3 days in a dream. Went to school and all. Felt hungry, bored. Stubbed my toe. It all felt real. My phone seemed to work. I remember looking stuff up that would make absolutely no sense IRL, but somehow made perfect sense in the dream. Story 10. One night, my dad was tucking me in when I was 8 years old. He said goodnight, and I replied goodbye. He asked me why I said bye, and we laughed it off. It was just an accident. The next morning, my brother found him passed in the living room. He had a heart attack in the middle of the night at the age of 48. Story 11. It was summer. I lived with my grandma. My brother was visiting for the summer. I was in college at the time. We had spent the day at the local pool with my cousins. We decided to all go out that night with some mutual friends. So, we stopped by my cousin's house to drop them off. My grandparents are there. We stop in for a minute, and then we're leaving to go get cleaned up to go out that night. My grandparents say they'll be home shortly. Okay, whatever. So, my brother and I head home. Our rooms were in the basement, with a bathroom in between. My brother gets showered and is cleaned up. I haven't gotten showered yet. Suddenly, the dogs are barking upstairs, and we can hear the garage opening. And then the door from the garage into the house opens, and we hear people talking and walking around. My brother says he's gonna head up and hang with the grandparents while he waits for me. Before I even get into the bathroom, he comes back looking freaked out. No one was there. The dogs were laying down. The garage was empty. No one was in the house. As he's telling me this, we hear it all over again, exactly like before. This time we both go up and there are my grandparents. We both heard it happen before it really happened. Story 12. Back in the mid-1990s, I had a dream that I went to visit my cousin. We live in different states, and her family was sad because someone close to their family had died. It bothered me enough that I mentioned it to my wife. My wife said that I should email my cousin and ask her if everyone is okay. I sent off an email asking if everyone is okay, because I had this dream, explaining the dream, but I am probably just being silly. She emails me back the next day and says, "No, I am not being silly. An uncle of her husband's had died recently, and that they were very close to him." Story 13. When I was a little kid, like around 6 or 7, my family got a pet, hamster, gerbil, whatever. I remember the first day we got him, I played with him, went upstairs for bed, fell asleep, woke up, came back downstairs, and he was dead. I was really sad that the pet we had just gotten was dead, and my parents informed me we had him for a year before he died. I literally have no recollection of that entire year. I just get a hamster, fall asleep, miss a year of my life, wake up, hamster's dead. It's trippy thinking about it now. Answer: that's weird. Thinking back, I don't know if it's a real memory or just a game of pretend. But when I was 4 to 5, I woke up on my couch and realized I didn't remember anything prior to that moment. I looked around. I saw my mom and said to her, "Are you my mom?" She played along and told me her name and my brother and sister's name, and then I asked for something to eat. My mom and dad still lived together, and am told they split when I was 4. So I guess I was 4 at the time. At the moment, I don't think I have any memories before that, but I was 4, so I guess that's to be expected. Story 14. When my mom called to tell me that my grandpa died, I thought she said Papa died, and Papa is the nickname for my dad. I was crying uncontrollably, and when I finally figured out it was Grandpa, I was too embarrassed to admit that I thought it was my dad. I called him later and told him, and he just laughed. Anyway, fast forward 3 weeks, and my dad dies too. Part of me thinks mishearing her was the universe preparing me to lose him. It was weird because it was like I lost him twice, and I'm still kind of waiting for someone to tell me it was all a mistake, and it was actually someone else. Edit. I feel kind of bad because I've barely thought about Grandpa since my dad died. My grandma has it the worst because she lost a husband and a son in the same month. Answer. Regarding your edit, the day of my aunt's funeral, my dad died. And then later that night, my gram died. July 29th, 2014 was a really fudge bad day in my family. But I've honestly never grieved the loss of my gram or my aunt. My aunt actually died a few days before my dad, but we knew he was super sick, and it would be pretty much any second. I've never shed a single tear over my gram or my aunt, and I did love them both. I had no room to be sad for them in my heart or something. I honestly cannot explain it, but my father, who was honestly my favorite person, took all the room in my heart. Story 15. A few years ago, my wife and I were riding in a car with my parents. We were all just chatting, and my dad kept periodically drumming on the steering wheel and humming the opening bars to Down Under by Men at Work. This happened a few times over a span of 10 minutes or so, and finally my mom asked him, "What song is that?" Dad replied by singing the chorus, and we all laughed. A few minutes later, he reached over to turn on the radio, and I had this weird feeling we were going to hear Down Under. I said something like, "I guarantee that song is going to be playing." No idea why I felt so strongly about this, but sure enough, it was playing on the second station that my dad tried. We couldn't believe it. Unfortunately, I've never been able to replicate this, but I felt like a wizard for a few days. Story 16. In 6th grade, I called my mom to let her know my dad was about to head her way to drop my little sister I off. Divorced parents. When she answered, I said, "Mama." My mom frantically asked, "My name? Is that you?" I said yes. She asked where I was. I said, "Daddy's house. We're about to come home now. Just wanted to let you know. Love you, Mama." She asked me, "Who's Daddy? Where are you? Are you okay?" Obviously, I was confused and just answered, "Mama, I'm fine. I'm okay. I love you. I'll see you soon." She said she loved me too. Tried to get me to stay on the phone. I just hung up. My dad later got a call. Visit from the police. As it turns out, it accidentally dialed the number of a woman whose daughter had the same name as me, had gone missing. Everything was cleared up very quickly, but I always thought it wasn't a mistake that I dialed the wrong number. Maybe it was that woman's daughter saying goodbye, saying, Answer. Not creepy, but my sophomore year of college. I get this phone call from some woman asking if her son is available. I tell her that he doesn't live there, and she kinda brushes it off and hangs up. Over the summer term, I got a phone call from the same woman, even though I was in a different dorm asking for my now roommate. Confused, I handed him the phone. Then, when I checked my roommate's AM away message, he had my old dorm phone number from my sophomore year listed as his. It was a typo, like 1 or 2 digits off from what his was. Apparently, we were destined to be roommates or something. Story 17. When I was 13 years old, I had a 13-gallon fish tank on a shelf on my wall. My father had recently passed away, and the last thing we did together was set it up. He got me red-tipped type sharks to put in it since sharks were my favorite animal. Well, sometime shortly after he died, I wake up one morning and there isn't a drop of moisture in the tank. I moved the rocks and plants around. There was about an inch-high amount, and no sign water was ever in it. The fish died, of course, but I cleaned that fish, thank plenty of times, and it took days to dry out. Still don't understand how that's possible, with no signs of water anywhere. Answer: if it's a heated tank, it's possible that the heating thermostat malfunctioned and boiled the water, which eliminated the sharks and evaporated the water. This isn't too difficult to explain. I had a betta fish, and somehow the heating mechanism, which I only had just added to his tank, blew out the glass, and the betta must have gotten electrocuted. I cried over that darn betta fish. I had transported him 1,600 miles from Florida to NJ, and he was fine. I was worried about the temperature of the water because it turned into winter here. Story 18. Sometimes, when I dream and I wake up. I know it's a dream. I just know it's a dream, but I can't wake up. And the harder I try to wake up, or the more I realize I have to wake up, the scarier it gets. Even though nothing really changes, it feels like a darkness enveloping you as you try and wake up from your fake room. How do I know it's a fake room? Just some weird details. Like how my wall looks a little too white, or the Christmas tree's lights are on when they're sub-sewed to be off. Don't ask why I have one in my room and not the living room, LOL. So then I go through like maybe 1 to 2 minutes of intense waking up, falling back asleep, trying to open my eyes but then falling back asleep right after. As I said, the rooms are similar but not too similar, so I can just about tell when I'm in the real world and when I'm dreaming, or perhaps both rooms are fake, and when I finally wake up, it's the real me in the real world. I don't know. Those are the scariest of dreams, even though they last for a few minutes tops, because that's right before I'm about to wake up. Story 19. When I was little, my family was at my grandparents' place. They had a pool in the back, and us kids were swimming while our parents ate on the porch. I, being a devious 8-year-old, decided to swim into the deep end where I was not yet allowed, being cocky and overconfident about my ability to swim. I dove down and touched the bottom of the pool. I stayed down there for a moment before I felt I needed air. I started to swim up, but I realized that I needed air a lot more urgently than I had previously thought. I felt my lungs burning and thought to myself that I needed air now. Still, another 1.5 feet underwater, I took a breath. Weirdly enough, it felt as though I had breathed in air. I broke the surface and tried to cough out whatever water would be in my lungs, but there was nothing. I didn't find it very odd at the time, but now I think about it often. Edit. Now I know why everyone says RIP to their inbox. Thanks everyone for my most liked comment so far. Answer: something similar happened to me when I was about 5 years old. I was playing in a pool on vacation with my grandparents. Somehow I ended up in deeper water than I realized and couldn't push up from the bottom fast enough. I stalled out somewhere in the middle and could not touch the bottom, but also could not pull myself upward because I wasn't a strong swimmer. It felt like my lungs were on fire because I needed air so bad, and I finally gasped. But instead of getting water, I got air. There were bubbles around me that hadn't been there before and disappeared as soon as I realized I had taken a breath. I was reminded of it a few years later when playing Sonic the Hedgehog on Sega. There is a mechanic where he can go underwater and breathe air bubbles to stay alive. I was the only person in the pool and wasn't even supposed to be in the pool unsupervised. No one knew I was there. My grandfather found me a few minutes after I came out of the pool. I probably should have died. I honestly thought I was the only person who ever experienced something like this. It is comforting to know I am not alone. Story 20. I was walking outside at 2 a.m., looking at my phone and listening to music with my headphones. I was completely zoned out. I was about to cross a street and briefly glanced if there was a car coming. I looked the wrong way, and if the light was green or not, right as I am in the middle of the road, a car is basically a meter away from me, and the last thing I see are the blinding headlights right below my knees, and the horn blaring through my music. A fraction of a second passes and I almost fall off my feet because I was expecting the impact and bracing for it. I open my eyes and see myself good. 10 feet away from the edge of the road, the song had changed. The light for the cars is green, and I see the red tail lights of a lone car driving down along the road. My heart is pounding out of my chest, and I had to sit down for a while. I get home and start reading about near-passing experiences, and I stumble on an idea called quantum immortality. Not sure if it messed me up even more, but the idea is that if you die in one parallel universe, your consciousness still continues in the ones where you live. I was more heartbroken about the thought of my mother having to bury me in my original universe than I was about my own passing. Answer: happened to me about 15 years ago. I'm 21 and visited my parents when I drive back home later in the evening when it's dark already. Not many cars with me on the road. It's about an 1-hour drive. I'm driving not really fast since I have a somehow eerie feeling I should better go slow and easy. I see the lights of the car very far in front of me turn right somewhere, and that's when I realize I'm alone on the road, straight road. No one after me, no one before. Lots of trees left and right. Suddenly there's a deer jumping on the road right before me. I slam the brakes and my car loses control. I see a tree coming and think I'm going to die now. I'm ready for impact as I suddenly hear the song change to a song I really love. And as soon as I think, great, at least I'll die listening to Elvis, then I realize the car in front of me. It's turning right. I'm still on the road. None of this had apparently happened. I'm driving, seeing what I've seen, what feels like 10 minutes ago. He's turning right. I slow down to almost nothing, complete shock in all of my bones. A few seconds later, I see in a distance that what looked like a deer crossed the road from left to right before, meaning the time I probably died in a parallel universe. It came from my right. I don't think I hit it though, I just lost control of my car, going left onto the tree. But apparently, I didn't. I made it home about 20 minutes later, and still don't know what happened that night.